Henry Kissinger once said, a turbulent history has taught Chinese leaders that not every problem has a solution, and that too great an emphasis on total mastery over specific events could upset the harmony of the universe. Keep this in mind as we discuss today French President Emmanuel Macron's recent trip to China, and how the statement he mentioned that we need to reduce our dependency on the dollar means for the global order moving forward. My name is David WWIII.
My name is Elizabeth Ann Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
Our show today is sponsored by Noble Gold.
French President Emmanuel Macron will be joining talks focusing on trade and the war in Ukraine.
French President Emmanuel Macron are on a 3-day trip there in hopes of resetting relations.
The trip is the latest push by Europe to engage with China, and they're expected to urge China to use its influence on Russia to halt the war in Ukraine.
Are you on the US or the Chinese side? Because now, progressively, a lot of people would like to see there are two orders in this world. This is a huge mistake, even for both the US and China. We need a single global order.
All right, what's going on with this topic? I know it happens a few days ago.
Yes, it happened a few days ago, but it is really important because what we were looking at over the last maybe months to 2 months is we're looking at a lot of countries sort of doing away with the US dollar, using their own currencies in bilateral trade. Well, that's one thing if it's, China and Russia or, China and Brazil, for example. It's another thing coming from France.
Yeah, close allies to the US, That is a seismic change. And by the way, the trip wasn't by himself.
Yes.
Ursula von der Leyen won with him, but we're going to get into that,
There's some juicy stuff in there too.
The interesting aspect of this is the timing of it. Now, the French president is saying that, he wants to hear what China has to say about the peace proposal.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. That's to me a double standard.
Yeah.
How can you say, I want to go to China to find out what this peace proposal is all about, and at the same time, you go around and support Ukraine by providing weapons, and it just doesn't make sense. So
I have a really interesting, we're not in the rooms, right? We're not in the rooms where these decisions are made.
Yeah.
But I have a very interesting curiosity or question about what happened while they were actually meeting. So I have a quote actually from Politico. So Politico reported this quote from the French president, and it says, so after spending around 6 hours with Chinese President Xi Jinping as part of a 3-day state visit to China, Macron made it extremely clear that France wants nothing to do with World War III. Very interesting piece of information, wants nothing to do with World War III, emphasizing that Europe must employ strategic autonomy, presumably led by France, to become a third superpower.
That's
interesting.
Yeah. It's because most likely a hint as to the multipolar world that is coming, and France wants sort of rather France does not want to be left behind, seeing who's going to be leading that multipolarity.
Right.
China.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. Exactly what you're speaking to is France doesn't seem to want to be left behind. So what's interesting about this is that this is the first sort of Western world country to do this.
Yeah, but there is other hidden agenda.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Macron didn't do it because he cares. Macron also went to China because China now is able to build its own airplane.
Yep.
So what's going to happen to Airbus? That is one of the reasons why he's over there.
Yep.
Now, because to me, that's, I've heard it before. I've been paying close attention to geopolitics for quite a while.
A little bit of time.
Yeah. I've heard it before where France will call for, maybe we need to build our European security independent from the US.
Yeah.
I've heard it a decade plus.
Yeah.
Way back.
Yeah.
Nothing happened, nothing emerged. Of course, if you go into history, you go back to the 60s when Charles de Gaulle at the time threatened to pull out of NATO.
Yeah.
They did, and they went back later. But to me, those are nothing but hypes.
Right.
You know, because if you are to play or to be relevant on the global stage, especially in the case of Macron, given what's going on in France,
Absolutely.
yeah, you're gonna have to issue a statement or something of that carries weight with it.
Yeah.
So in the world of geopolitics, statement like what you said,
Yep.
based on Macron, carries weight.
Well, speak a little bit to what's happening in France, because I do think that's a really important thing
Yeah.
to dive into when we're looking at this statement.
Well, for France now, he wanted to shove down a new law without parliament approval, without putting it to vote, as to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. I have family that lives in France.
Yeah.
French people, they like their leisure time.
Yes.
That's just how their
absolutely.
system is.
Yeah.
Who are we, Krista? I used to have heated debates with my family over dinner. Can you imagine? I'm an American. They're French. And they said, well, you guys always working and all that stuff. And I said, yes, we are. That's why we're ahead. And I said, well, we can't do what you guys doing. For example, they have 35-hour week. That's full week in
Yeah.
France.
Yeah.
Passed by, approved by parliament.
Right.
So in this case, retirement, people like their retirement. But for Macron to raise the retirement by 2 years, and the justification is the spending.
Yeah.
And there is, I can see the logical argument, but doesn't hold.
Right.
And here is why it doesn't hold. If you happen to be a French citizen, by the time you turn 24, you are issued a stipend from the government. That's how
24?
yeah, by the age of 24.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how it
Yeah.
works over there. At least that's to my knowledge, unless they changed it. Your college, higher degree is paid for, higher education. Your healthcare is taken care of and all that stuff. So the argument that Macron made was that, well, we need to have money to... I said, well, wait a minute. If you're going to do that, why are you sending money to Ukraine?
Right, right. And I think that's people's arguments, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are you spending money on these other things when you aren't spending them on, when you aren't spending it on us?
Yeah. Well, same for us here in the US. You know, you look what's going on here. You know, media staying quiet about, you know,
Yeah.
I've seen some images on Twitter, you know, I couldn't believe this is America.
yeah.
San Francisco, LA areas.
Yes,
some
I
other
used to
areas.
live in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and I can tell you it does not look like what you would expect the United States to look like.
Yeah. Now, a word from our sponsor. Noble Gold Investments have made it their mission to stay on top of the most important economic news. 3 bank runs in the last month. These are the second largest and third largest runs in history. The government is taking steps to guarantee all deposits. That means more money printing. Plus, the Fed is sitting on unrealized losses of $1.2 trillion on $8.3 trillion bond portfolio. And the Fed will continue to raise interest rate even if they tank the economy. Do you know who are the only ones not afraid? The ones that are invested in gold with Noble Gold Investments. Gold is the most stable asset outside of any government control. Thousands have approached Noble Gold Investments to get their hands on gold. Hurry and go to geopoliticsgold.com to secure your wealth now. Bag a free 5-ounce America, the beautiful coin, with each gold or silver IRA if you qualified. Once again, geopoliticsgold.com. That's geopoliticsgold.com. There is always risk with investments, and there are no guarantee of any kind. So that is one of the reasons why Macron is looking at it from, okay, Macron, in this case, I'm just putting myself in his shoes, his mind thinking, I am seeing the world is shifting. Okay?
Yeah.
But it's shifting not in favor of the West or the United States for that matter. I am seeing also that the Ukraine conflict showing no signs of abating, you know, even though there is a confirmation, and we're going to find out about this soon to confirm it, that there will be a major offensive by the Russians in May.
Yeah.
So we're going to confirm this.
Yeah, be
to
on
you.
the lookout, guys. Be on the
for
lookout.
that. So to me, that's how I'd be thinking. The world is shifting, and he's thinking in terms, okay, how about economics?
Right.
This seeing the cost of the energy.
Right.
That's to me the reason why he went to China.
Yeah.
He's not about Ukraine.
No, I think I
don't
think you're
buy
absolutely
that.
right.
And I read the 12 points proposal that China proposed.
Yeah.
They're logical, they are realistic. No, but the United States already said we're going to reject any initiative
Right.
for Ukraine peace, let alone coming from a non-Western country.
Yeah. And it's interesting that specifically the Ukraine conflict is becoming less and less popular. And so as it becomes less and less popular, it's interesting to watch the United States sort of hold on to that narrative and hold on to that, well, there's not going to be a ceasefire. We're going to keep going no matter what.
Yeah.
Whereas countries, even Western countries now, are starting to really sort of jump ship. And so this might be one of the final nails in the coffin here, because we're looking at Western world now jumping ship. You know, there's a video that we posted on our Twitter. David, you might have reposted it, but it was the Austrian parliament, I think.
Yes, I remember
getting up, and it was, you know, not everybody, but it was definitely a large part, getting up and in protest.
Walking away,
walking away while Zelensky was speaking. And, you know, Zelensky was brought in via Zoom or brought in via, teleconference. And they got up and they walked away. And the Western media absolutely did not report that. I did not hear anything about that here.
They didn't.
I found that on Twitter, and it came with a video. So if you guys want to check out our Twitter handle is below. Follow us on Twitter, and David has his own Twitter also, and he's very active on that Twitter, and that link is here too. So that's been a very interesting thing to watch, is how, even 10 years ago, would this narrative have held up? Would France have stuck with the United States? Would all these other countries have stuck with the United States? Whereas right now, it's like rats jumping off a sinking ship.
That's exactly what's going on. The other aspects of it has to do with the financial.
Yeah.
Is France now, because when you hear about France in the EU, it's a leading force. I mean, without France, it would be no EU, basically.
Absolutely.
Let's just state
Absolutely.
the fact.
Yeah.
You get France and Germany.
France and Germany.
That's the EU. The rest is just, that's the reality of it. My thinking is that he's seeing the financial system where it's headed, and he's thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Because even the euro might end up having to deal with China more so than it did with the US. What prompted me to say this? 2 weeks ago, France import liquefied natural gas from China, 64,000 tons.
Yep.
I checked that info,
Yep.
and it's accurate. And guess how they paid for it, the French?
In
Chinese renminbi yuan. That's how they paid for it. They didn't pay in a dollar. So what's interesting, it's like, again, I just find that again this morning, that Europe still importing Russian oil and jet fuel.
Yep.
And guess where they're
Absolutely.
importing it from? India.
Talk about how, because this is crazy to me.
Yeah, it is. That
It's
tells you
crazy
double
to me.
standard
Yes.
for the Europeans. That's why European
Absolutely.
leaders are so, I use the term stupid. I don't like that term.
Yeah.
But who is end up
I
holding
feel like they're shifty. They're
They
shifty.
are.
They're
They are.
shifty.
Yeah.
Because that's what this is. This is like using back channels to make themselves look good while
Good.
they're doing something sort of shifty
yeah.
behind the scenes.
and the citizen is paying the price.
Yes. So explain what
Well,
the
what
deal
happened
was.
is that India increased its import of oil from Russia. We all know what the US did to India.
Yeah.
We pressured India to stop, and India shrugged its shoulders and said, no, we are importing oil from Russia.
Yeah.
And guess what? We are paying for it in rupees and rubles.
Yep. And not the petrodollar.
Dollar, and what India ended up doing? Because it increased. Actually, I found out the stats. India is to import about 154 barrels per day from Russia.
154,000
1,000 barrels per day. Per day,
Yeah.
just from it. India's total import from other countries is 4.5 million barrels.
Yeah.
Because India is a large market.
It's a very large
Yeah.
market.
So now, for 2022, 2023, they increased it to 200,000 barrels per day.
From Russia?
From Russia alone. Guess what the rest of that is going to? Europe.
Yep.
And guess how much they charge in Europe? 5 or 6 times the amount.
Yep.
That is the idea of where I see, and I said this before, a few months ago, Russia won't have to worry. You know why? Because it got two largest markets in the world,
Yep.
China
And
and
India.
India.
Yep.
So that just makes perfect sense.
Yep.
But for France President Emmanuel Macron, he's gonna have now, he's thinking in terms of, I am seeing the shift
Yeah.
happening before my own eyes.
Yeah.
I also have to think about the economics of France, given what
Absolutely.
just happened with AUKUS. Remember, we stabbed
Yep,
the
with the
French
submarines,
in their
yep.
back, pulled the deal out, and now with China building its own aircraft, he's thinking about Airbus, what's going to be happening.
Yep.
That's to me the reason why he went. It's not about Ukraine.
Yeah.
I bet you this. I could be wrong, of course, and if I'm wrong,
Right.
I'll say I'm wrong. But I bet you it's not about that. What gives me also, what led me to this conclusion is how the reception was.
Yeah.
Remember, who won with him? Ursula von der Leyen.
Yep.
Was she on a red carpet? No.
So what was the difference between how President Macron came in and how Ursula von der Leyen came in? Because this is also very telling.
Yeah, well, she was through public airport. She wasn't like everybody else, just checked her. I saw the images.
Yeah.
It's not like a made up stuff. And
Yeah.
usually you guys know by now, if I am not certain of something, I will not state it.
Well, and that's why we're
like
not the news.
No,
We
we're not.
go back
No.
and check things
Yeah.
after the
Yeah,
fact.
sometimes we might be late a day or two or three, but I'd rather be late and confirm the information. That's what makes us different than others.
Yeah.
I want you guys to know this one. So then the other thing you need to add to this, because here is the thing, and I've always said this, I feel like I'm repeating myself all the time, but it's important.
Yeah, it is important.
In international relations, context matters.
Yep.
Did you see the image, how the three of them were sitting?
Oh, yeah.
What was in the middle?
A giant
Garden.
garden. Yep.
There is a reason for that.
Yep.
You all remember the statement when Ursula von der Leyen and Joseph Borrell, the foreign policy chief, said Europe is the garden and the rest is whatever. China, smart enough, through diplomat, that's a subtle message. That's why if Europeans think that Chinese cannot read between the lines, they're mistaken.
Yep.
And that showed me how ill-informed Europeans about the culture and history of
Right.
China. And again, I'm talking based on facts,
Right.
historically speaking. So for the Chinese president to approach it that way, he's like just laying the ground for them to see,
Yeah.
we are here if you like to shift.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that because he did seem to shift. So one of the other things that was covered was Taiwan. And it was covered in a very meaningful way, interestingly enough, because, you know, as the Taiwanese president, Tsai,
Yeah.
thank you. I would like to pronounce it correctly.
Tsai.
As she was touring, you know, Central America and up into the United States.
On her way to
Yep.
Latin America, yeah. She
Yeah.
made the stop in LA
In LA.
and had the Speaker of the House meet with her.
Right, right. So as that's happening, we're now looking at Macron being in China and him talking about not being willing to fight over Taiwan. And that's interesting. Let me see if I can find the quote that he said over. Okay, so this is actually from Politico. So just hours after his flight left, I hope I pronounced this right, Guangzhou. I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly. Headed back to Paris, China launched a large military exercise around the self-ruled island of Taiwan, which China claims is its territory, but the U.S. has promised to arm and defend. This is from Politico, remember. Those exercises were a response to Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen's 10-day diplomatic tour of Central American countries that included a meeting with Republican U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy while she transited in California. People familiar with Macron's thinking said he was happy Beijing had at least waited until he was out of Chinese airspace before launching the simulated Taiwan encirclement exercise.
Yeah.
So this is very interesting because he very clearly let's see if I can also find this quote. The paradox would be, Macron says, that overcome with panic, we believe we are just America's followers, he says. The question Europeans need to answer is it in our interest to accelerate a crisis on Taiwan? No. Yeah. The worst thing would be to think that we Europeans must become followers on this topic and take our cue from the US agenda and a Chinese overreaction.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, because they all were hoping that China will state, because that's what this is all about also. The West, US and Western allies and all that, they were hoping that China will condemn the conflict as far as China's not going to do it.
Yeah.
China does not going to do it. You know?
No.
But
no,
Macron, and even whatever he's saying, in my personal opinion, I would not take his word at face value.
Of course.
I've been around long enough to know how French politics operates. I have family in it. I'm a little bit familiar. Well, not a little bit. I'm familiar with how their system works.
You mean politicians aren't always honest, David?
Oh, no, they are.
No way. Always.
Yeah, look, our politicians.
Our politicians.
How much they're doing for American people.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, or Europeans for
yeah.
that matter. So that's why I'm like, even I do believe, however, he is aware of the shift, the global shift that's taking place, which, as I said again, will not be to the West's favor. It's because at some point, looking at the demonstrations in his country, it is about the pension retirement. But when you start having calls of France needs to get out of NATO, that is what the slogans now going on. I can see personally where this is headed. Of course, he's not running for office again because the French constitution only you run for 2 terms, 7 years each, and that's it. Doesn't matter. But if he doesn't do something at this magnitude, his legacy will be forever. That is to me why he went to China under the umbrella of we want to see what the Chinese initiative for. Well, wait a minute, because you think about it from an international relations perspective. Why did he go to China but not the US?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
It tells you right there where the thinking is. The question that becomes is, will he follow through?
Right, and I don't know that.
I have my doubts. I always felt, and I don't shy away from saying this, Europe is like a child that never grows up and is always in a constant need of direction and discipline. Now, I always say this, I don't shy away from it, because that's the truth.
It is, and it's been getting it from the United States. And now it's looking to the next big power broker.
Exactly. And when you look at Germany with, with 35,000 troops hours on their territory that's been there forever, you can see it's been there, it's nothing new. We all know Europe is too weak politically. And China also will have to think, am I going to be dealing with a weak Europe? This is why I said, I'll think of, and I'll say it, I think the trip by Macron, he humiliated himself. It's nice to reach out to China. But China's not stupid. China reads between the lines. How can they trust you? Well, you could turn around, because you guys did it before. Europeans did it. How can you trust Scholz, for example, the Chancellor of Germany? How can you trust Ursula von der Leyen or Joseph Borrell? They have no standing. They can't say no to the U.S. They're in no position to do it.
Well, and they've left themselves in no position to, right? So if you let another country basically be your armed forces, where have you left yourself in that circumstance, right? There's one other thing that I want to bring up that I think is very interesting and worth noting. And that is that Macron, a couple of times, especially last November, he talked about basically a one world government. And we know that, he was a World Economic Forum young leader, along with a really uncomfortably disproportionate amount of other leaders around the world are World Economic Forum young leaders.
Can we state the names? Justin Trudeau, Dictator Trudeau, Sanna Marin of Finland, Jacinda Ardern
Jacinda
of
Ardern,
New
yeah.
Zealand.
Yeah.
Who else was? It was another one from
There's
Europe.
actually a lot, and
Yeah.
if you're not just looking at the heads of state, right? If you're not just
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
at like president or
Yeah.
prime minister, and you actually look at cabinet and Congress,
You're right.
and those members are actually substantial. Also, if you guys haven't looked at how many world leaders were World Economic Forum Young Leaders, just go look up that. And they state it very clearly that is the case, and that's something that they're proud of. But I'm not sure that's something we should be okay with, and we should be comfortable with. Is so many of those leaders being that. But he talked about basically wanting a one world government. He said,
We are in a jungle and we have two big elephants trying to become more and more nervous. If they become very nervous and start war, it will be a big problem for the rest of the jungle. You need cooperation of a lot of other animals. Tigers, monkeys, and so on.
as he is calling for a single global order. So I think that this sort of deepens what's going on here a little bit further, because we were sort of looking at, the Chinese, Russian sort of BRICS countries, right?
Yeah.
And that being one pole, and then the United States being another pole. And so we have sort of this this multipolar world, you call it, right?
Yeah.
But Macron is talking about a single government.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've heard we've begun to hear the whispers of a single world government. And I'm not sure that that's something anyone wants, because it doesn't, it again takes the problem of making, a multipolar world that has other people's interests in it, and putting it in a single world government. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that people have had with the United States, is that no single entity should police the world. No single entity knows what's right for everyone.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to slip that in, because that feels a little bit relevant in this circumstance.
And I don't think so it will work anyway.
I don't think so either.
Because, you know why?
Yeah.
Because the multipolar system is able to manage itself, and it will be
Right.
able to manage itself. So that is where this is my personal opinion, this is where I see it going, as far as how. The only thing that I feel comfortable saying is that he truly understands the shift that's taking place.
Yeah.
The shifting sands of the global geopolitical landscape
Yeah.
are shifting, whether the West likes it or not.
Yep.
And the West cannot stop it. I mean, we did a video about the multipolarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna release a video for you about how the United States is terrified of a multipolar system. When I say terrified, I'm not referring physically.
Yeah.
We have a strong military presence. It's
Yeah.
not about that. It's how that new system is going to take away the power from the dominance that the US used to have, which we had since World War II. And that's coming now to gradually declining. And could be that France, that Macron saw that and wants to. There is another thing before I forget.
Okay.
Also, the shift is not going towards Africa. The shift is going east. And what just happened in Africa? African countries kicked France out.
Yeah.
So, remember, he was used to be an imperialist.
Yeah, they did. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the mindset of it, France is going to have to be it's looking for its own. Where can we find the next interest?
Yep.
Well, of course, if he went to China with the mindset that China's today is not China's of 50 years ago.
Right.
Things
right.
has changed.
Yeah.
And this is what I mentioned about the scare the United States, why the United States is terrified of the multipolar system.
Well, and we're not advocating for China.
No.
I want to make that very, very clear.
No.
We make it clear on every single video, because every so often we'll get a comment that says, oh, you guys love China. It's not about that.
No.
It's about paying attention to the changes that are coming, whether you like them or not. We're not here to tell you China is great or China is bad. It's not about that. It's about looking at what's actually happening, and and what do you need to do to prepare yourself.
Indeed.
Because you're right. You bring this up all the time, David. The world is changing.
Yeah, I do. There's another point we need to consider.
Okay.
Also, why France used the term we don't want to be part of World War III.
Yes. Oh, I
And
think
you
that's
know
so
why that
important,
is? Because of who just been admitted to NATO just last
Yeah.
week.
Finland. Yep.
So Finland is now 31st. I just got a word this morning. Sweden might be admitted too.
Oh,
Because
no.
Sweden now might make a decision soon to turn over the wanted
Yeah.
Turkish to the Turkish government, because that was the only holdup.
Yeah.
And if Turkish government gets a hold of those individuals,
Yeah.
they will allow Sweden to get in. So could it be that France was calculating that because, like I said last time, and I wrote about it in my book, on a Russia book, that should Finland ever get involved in NATO,
Yeah.
Russia will deploy short and medium range, including tactical nukes, to the
Yeah.
border.
Yeah.
And guess what Russia just did last week?
That.
They moved the nukes, the tactical nukes, to the border. So could it be that France is looking at that and saying, with the U.S. pushing the conflict towards Taiwan,
Yeah.
because that's where the next one comes in.
Yeah,
You guys,
absolutely.
It's no mystery.
No.
Yeah, it's no mystery. We've been involved in conflicts, not wars, conflicts since 1952.
Yep.
You know, we had what? Korean War,
Yep.
Vietnam, Gulf War,
Gulf too.
two, Afghanistan, now,
Now Ukraine.
and what's next?
Taiwan.
Taiwan.
Well, and Macron even speaks to that. He even speaks directly to that and says, we don't want to be part of World War III. We don't want to be part of Taiwan. We don't want to be part of this issue.
Yeah. Well, because he
all.
understood. He understood that Europe has sort of joined the U.S. to its hips,
Yeah.
on its hips, basically.
He says that.
Because if it were the case, why didn't they establish their own security?
Right.
You know, why didn't they pay for it?
Right.
You know, this is where I kind of agree with the former president, President Trump. You know, I don't care for the guy because
Yeah.
he doesn't understand foreign policy. But you give credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
One of the things he talked about is that those NATO countries need to put their fair share of the defense budget.
Absolutely.
You know, why are we
Absolutely.
paying 75% of our own money,
Right.
taxpayers' money?
Right.
Average Joe, average Jane has no clue.
Yep.
You know, they need to put the money themselves. So for France was calling for an independent European security.
Yeah.
So
Which I think is probably appropriate.
yeah, well, this is where you think of those scenarios. As geopolitical analysts, you will think of scenarios. Could NATO disintegrate with the new shifting world? There is that
Yeah.
possibility of it. But even for the shifting of the global order itself, you guys need to, if you're watching us from some other parts of the world, one thing we want you to keep in mind. The US is not going to go down quietly.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you this. You know, let alone with the financial shift that's taking place. You know, once the dollar goes down,
Yep.
it's you know, you think of it like you know what happened when you just this analogy. This is just what happened when you corner an animal.
They get really fighty.
They do whatever
Yeah,
to
they
get
do-
out of that.
yeah.
Same concept. Just apply it to international setting.
Yeah.
The U.S. is not going to go down because we're going to lose so much.
Yep.
But it was our own fault.
Right.
We abused our power.
Yep.
Power is a responsibility.
Absolutely.
And you have to use it wisely. We've abused it.
Well, and I think that's what we're calling for right now is if we can start being responsible,
Exactly.
which I don't necessarily see
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
But if we can, if our government can start actually being responsible and having responsible foreign policy, I think that's the only thing that will really save us. I don't see that happening. I'm going to be honest,
Yeah, I
but
don't see
you
that
know,
either.
you gotta put it out
Exactly,
there.
exactly. But this is at least to put this within the context of
Yeah.
the you put things always in a bigger picture, a global context of why
Yeah.
Macron went to China at this time, why Ursula went with him anyway. She was like, I almost felt like a fly on a wall watching it because she's very subservient to the U.S.
Yeah.
You know, there is another reason for her to go.
What is that?
Well, because she's now running for the next NATO Secretary
Yeah.
General.
Yeah.
I hope she doesn't get it. She's not qualified,
Yeah.
first of all. She lies, second. And third, she can take a stand on issues. You know, she'll say one thing
And do something else. Yeah.
Europeans, I wish it didn't happen. I really wish this Ukraine conflict didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it demonstrates how weak European leaders are.
Yeah.
No exception. I take few. The Hungarian president.
Yeah.
The Hungarian prime minister.
Yeah.
Orban. That's about it. The rest of the traditional Western Europe, they're all weak. So weak. And the fact that, in the case of China, the fact that China brokered the deal between arch enemies, Iran and Saudi Arabia, that just tells you right there. I believe in diplomacy. I'm one of the staunch supporters of diplomacy.
Yep.
War is your last resort.
Yeah, absolutely.
You shouldn't get to war
Yeah.
after you exhaust all your diplomatic means. But how can you conduct diplomacy when you have amateurs conducting that?
Right.
One. Second, how can you conduct diplomacy when you couldn't be a neutral? When you couldn't be an honest broker?
Right.
That's just the truth of it. China succeeded in the case of Iran and Saudi Arabia because it was neutral.
Right.
It didn't force Saudi Arabia to do this. It didn't force Iran to do this, which, by the way, the prime ministers of both countries, Iran and Saudi Arabia, just met a few days ago in China.
Wow, what a surprise.
Yeah, it tells you, that's to me where the display of diplomacy is all about.
Yeah.
And again, you give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely.
We failed miserably in understanding how we can bring parties together.
Yeah. I
we-
don't think we even tried.
No,
And,
no.
and that's the thing. The United States, unfortunately, the foreign policy has been war, has been conflict. Has been bringing misery instead of bringing peace.
Yeah.
And I think overall the world is really tired of
Yeah.
it. Understandably so.
It's sad to say our country. We love our country. It's our country.
Yeah.
We'll defend it by any means.
And the people here are good
Yeah,
people.
the
We say
Americans
this all the
are,
time.
yeah.
Americans
like any
are good
other people elsewhere in the world. They're wonderful people out there. It just, you call a spade a spade. When our country does wrong, you gotta call it out. You can't sugarcoat it. You can't be wishy-washy about it. You can't be, well, I gotta use a soft term. No, you call it the way it is.
Yeah.
I wish some schmuck in Washington politician watching our video.
Yeah.
I really wish.
Yeah.
And if it happens to, maybe they'll come to their senses that maybe we ought to work for the American people. Maybe we ought to work for world peace.
Yes.
For world peace, not just, yes, you want to strive, you want to succeed, you want to be whatever, but not at the expense of others.
No.
There's that concept of live and let live.
Well, and it's interesting watching China do this because, like I said, I am not a fan of China. But it's interesting to watch their way is the building up, right? The building of infrastructure, the building of ports, the building of railways, the building up of things instead of the destruction. So when they're looking to secure their interests, what do?
Yeah.
They go and they buy the companies. So they own a lot of, looking at Africa, they own a lot of the uranium mines in Africa.
Yeah.
But they didn't go in and destroy that area. They went in and they put money into that area. They built it up. They built up that infrastructure. When they go in and they buy a port, or they pay to build a port, or give loans to a country to build a port, for example, that's building up the infrastructure in that area.
And they don't force those countries.
As far as I understand,
the one that I found,
yeah.
I checked, they didn't force countries. They disclosed the terms.
Yeah.
Now the countries had to decide.
Right.
It's like, let's just call it a spade a spade.
Right.
Can you go to a bank and take a loan for $10 million or $100 million?
Right.
We can't,
Right.
because we can't afford it.
Right.
So if a bank comes to me and said, I'm going to give you $100 million loan, I'll say, no, thank you.
No, thanks.
I can't afford it. That's what I found
Right,
out. So.
right.
And just to give you examples, sorry to interrupt
go
you
ahead,
here
go ahead,
because,
go ahead.
well,
Yeah.
I get hyper sometimes.
I know.
Just one of those. I just find out that China's going to be building schools in Iraq.
Yeah.
You know how it was a bridge in Iraq that's been in the works for the last 10 years, and it's not completed.
Yeah.
I was in Iraq. I was on the ground.
Yeah.
I was against the invasion to begin with. I argued it's not going to lead to a good outcome.
Yeah.
And it will destroy this country forever.
Yeah.
Most Americans, most of us do not, in the West for that matter, do not know that Iraq, you know, Iraq used to be the center of the Arab civilization.
Yeah.
That's
I
where
heard
the
that.
grammatical rules of the Arabic language were established. They have no clue how old that country is and the history of it.
Yeah.
This is why we are poor readers of history. We don't understand.
Yeah.
So China is going and going to be building a school in Iraq.
Well, and that's like a fundamental difference
Yeah.
in terms of how they're, because I always say this, right? There's two ways that you can take over a country.
Yeah.
You can take them over militarily, or you can take them over economically. And the United States has focused on militarily, and China has focused on economically.
Economics.
And so when we're looking at these two systems,
Yeah.
which systems see, and it's not the United States, like through the United States through the IMF, for example, has also taken over financially. However, the IMF tends to leave some destruction in their wake too.
Yeah.
And so even in the financial terms, there ends up being destruction.
Yeah.
And the problem is that that leads to so much misery that the first chance that people have to get out of it, it's like the bully, right? The first chance that they have to get out from under the bully, they take it.
They thought, yeah. And I'll give you two examples, two countries, quickly. Sri Lanka
Sri Lanka
and Argentina.
and
countries.
Argentina. Recently.
Recently. Yeah. So that's just and this is why you put you guys, like we always say, you put it within the bigger picture. You don't just think of French
Absolutely.
president. No,
Yeah.
there are more other pieces in the puzzle for you to form that, and that's your conclusion, not ours. You reach your own based on your understanding. We provide you the facts to the best of our knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, and usually we do our due diligence in looking up the information before we say something, because we check it.
Right.
You know, it's my name in line, it's my credibility in line. I've worked very hard to be where I am today.
Well,
geopolitically.
Geopolitically,
Yes.
and you are a true geopolitical analyst. And you know, David will never brag on himself, but we have all 4 books that David has written, and he co-authored 2 others. So David's written 6 books, and he is worth a follow on Twitter if you guys have not followed him. But, you know, there are a lot of people out there talking about how they're analysts, and that's great. You know, they have some good points and all of that. But, you know, you have, what is your PhD in?
International security.
So David has a PhD in, I knew that, but you know, I just wanted you to tell them. David has a PhD in international security and has written 6 books. So there are different levels. And you're a veteran, and you worked in Washington, D.C., and you've been doing it for, what, 30 years?
An award-winning educator.
And an award-winning educator. And a professor. So, and a professor of government, specifically.
Political science. When I used to
science.
teach the graduate program for master's degree, I used to teach international relations. I enjoyed those students. They're from some parts of the world. Wonderful. But the system is, education system. I told them, I was straightforward with them. That's why they appreciate me for.
Yeah.
You know, students are smart. They can tell a difference between BS individual and somebody who cares. I cared for my students because they were my responsibility.
Right.
Because I always ask myself, when I leave the classroom, did I give 110% to them or not? It's like what I do with you guys here. Did I? Anytime I leave the studio, I ask myself, did I put in 110% or not? Because I'm not here to just sit in front of camera and look pretty. I care less for that stuff. That's always I ask myself. You know, well, it's no different. If we are to share knowledge, you got to share knowledge that will be useful to people.
Right.
You know, we don't, like I said, if I have no tolerance for nonsense, I don't tolerate.
That is a true fact about you, David.
If I ever came across some statements that do not make sense, I will let the person have it. That's just me, how I operate, because I want you to know what to expect from me. And what you will expect from me in return is accurate information. I do my due diligence in searching the info for you. I spend time to get that information to make sure it is as accurate as possible. And second, I'm sharing with you my experiences over decades or so. So that's what you would expect from me. And that is the reason why we decided to have this channel here.
Absolutely.
It's because, again, is it just about sitting in front of camera? No. I have a lot of stuff I can do. I'm a very busy person. But this, it's your time that I take seriously. And I got to make sure your time is spent wisely with us. I don't want to waste your time.
Absolutely.
So if I don't have anything of substance to say, I won't show up.
Absolutely.
So that's how I feel.
Well, and this is important. Right now, what's happening, they say that there are years where nothing happens and then weeks where it seems like the entire world is changing. And
That's where we are.
That's where we are right now. And, we're in this together.
Yeah.
You guys are part of our community.
Indeed.
We are part of yours, and we're in this together. We also have a newsletter, guys. If you want to check out the top stories that Western and legacy media isn't covering, but that you really need to know about, sign up for our newsletter at geopoliticsandconflict.com. It's right on the front page, and it's free. It goes out every Friday, and we make sure that we curate information for you that is not being heavily covered by the Western media.
And also we have a course.
We do. We have a course. It's called No Nonsense Politics, and we do a really deep dive into how exactly it is that the world is changing. And we have a community that goes along with it. We do live Q&As for you guys. We have people in our membership that got on Zoom with us and ask questions and join the discussion. And we have a community where you guys can talk to each other. If you want kind of a safe place to be able to really talk through some of this stuff, join our community. It's at geopoliticsinconflict.com/no nonsense.
And we're soon going to be doing the government.
And soon we are going to be doing a live
we
government
got a lot
course.
of stories about that.
Yes, so David is going to primarily be teaching it, and he's going to be teaching it live in early July. So stay tuned for that.
So.
And if you want information about it, go sign up for our newsletter at geopoliticsinconflict.com, because more information will be going out through that newsletter.
Indeed. Any final thought before we wrap it up?
Just that it's very interesting to me that now this is starting to come out of Europe.
Yeah. And if I may add to this one that if that proceeds, then you're going to be seeing a shift.
Yep.
For now, I can't say that because I'm going to have to wait, and I have somebody in mind I need to reach out to in France to find out. But if, and this is a big if this moves forward, then you're going to start to see the signs of the breakaway from it. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
It's going to take time, but that's usually where we see it going. So.
Absolutely.
Well, we hope, guys, you find this very informative. And as always, prepare yourself for changing the world order. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.